The Battle of Thermopylae, one of the most incredible battles in the course of human history, in which King Leonidas led 300 Spartans against over 2 million Persians. In this episode of NBS History, we're going to see what actually happened at the Battle of Thermopylae. So why was there a war between the Persians and the Greeks? Why did the Battle of Thermopylae even happen? Let's begin in 540 BC. Cyrus the Great, the leader of the Achaemenid Empire, the Persian Empire, probably because I butchered that word, has quelled many revolts and taken over many areas. Key areas that he's taken over here in Ionia. These were Greek settlements back then, and he had put down and conquered the people that were there, incorporating them into the Persian Empire. Now, what he has done is he set up tyrants. This isn't the literal term that we use today. It just refers to leaders of areas. And these tyrants are more or less local people in the community. Some of them are Greek. Some of them are Persian. But importantly, there is one tyrant in question that's going to change the course of history. Now, this tyrant, his name is Aristagoras of Miletus. Miletus is an area just over here. And he's running into some discontent with the public around 500 BC. He's not looking like he's in a strong position, and people, they don't like him so much. But he finds himself in a situation where he might be able to make some grounds and strengthen his position within the Persian Empire. So, what ends up happening is, around 522 BC, Cyrus the Great has deceased, and Darius the Great has taken over. Also, in 499 BC, we have a small local island just out here in the sea called Naxos. It's running into turmoil, and it's in a state of chaos. Aristagoras is being made aware of this by people from Naxos, and they're telling him that he might have a chance of taking it for himself, and this would greatly increase his influence in the Persian Empire and make him look great. And he needs this at this time because he's in some discontent. Now, he can't do this himself, and he has the help of a local satrap known as Atrophenes, who's the brother of Darius. He's also the satrap of Lydia, which is just over here. On top of this, he is going to attack a place in which he thinks it's going to be an easy battle, and he goes into this overconfident. He takes his forces and he gets into a siege, and unfortunately the siege of Naxos, he loses horribly, and it's quite humiliating. So he's sent home packing. Now, he has run into a muck. He's in debt to the satrap they took with him, Atrophenes, the brother of Darius. Also, Atrophenes is completely humiliated, and he's Persian nobility. So both of them are in a terrible position. Aristagoras decides the only thing that he can do is start a rebellion. So he starts what's known as the Ionian Revolt. So out of a need of paying off the debt that Aristagoras owes to the satrap that he led with him, he starts this revolt. And what he soon realizes is he can't do this alone with the Ionian forces. He has to find aid. So he sails over to mainland Greece, and he goes to the best aid that you can ever get, the Spartans. Finds Cleomenes I, who's the king of Sparta during this time, and asks him if he'll lead this rebellion. And he's declined. The king refuses and wants nothing to do with this. So, like anyone else who's been refused by the Spartans, he goes to the next best thing, the Athenians. Now, the Athenians had just overturned a tyrant of their own, who had been placed somewhat by Persians. So they were already enemies of the Persians at this point, and they have promoted a new thing, democracy. They agree to help him with this rebellion. And not only do they come, another force in the Greek mainlands comes called Ereteria. So the Athenians and the Ereterians join forces to start this rebellion. Now, 498 BC, the rebellion is going quite well. They do a surprise attack on a city known as Sardis, which is the satrapical capital. Upon attacking Sardis, they end up, some scholars say, accidentally burning everything down. And they have a great initial success. But upon burning everything down, they soon retreat and try to attack other places, which ends up being Ephesus. Now, by this time, Darius and the Persian forces have mobilized, and they quickly destroy their forces. So the Athenians and the Eucharians just run for their lives, and they sail back home, leaving the poor Ionians to lose the battle. Now, while Darius is putting down this rebellion, he actually treats them pretty well. What he ends up doing is he allows them to keep the democracy that they were promoting, because the Athenians are now the kings of democracy, promoting it everywhere. And on top of this, he actually encourages the Persian nobles in the area to start practicing the Greek religion. So in a way, Darius was actually overwhelmingly nice to these people, surprisingly, considering all of the things that he did to the Egyptians and other people. Anyways, while Darius is treating the Ionians quite well, he has made something up in his mind, and that is he is going to punish the Athenians and the Eucharians for what they had done at the revolt. So Darius in 492 BC sends envoys to mainland Greece, demanding earth and water. Depending on the circumstances of the city, this could mean surrender, an alliance, or hospitality, as some of the city-states in Greece were actually already pretty much allied to the Persians, such as Thebes. So, Darius had also sent envoys to Sparta and Athens. The Athenians, when getting their envoys, decided to throw them into a pit, and the Spartans threw theirs into a well, while screaming, "Dig it out yourselves," referring to the earth and water. This is often misunderstood. I want to note that this is Darius sending envoys. This is not Xerxes later on in history. So, almost most of the Greek city-states take this and ally themselves to Darius. However, in 490 BC, Darius finds his way over to one of the places he wanted to attack, Eucharia. And for 6 days, he lays a siege on the great city. The city puts up a small fight, but they are completely overwhelmed. And upon winning the battle, Darius enslaves almost all of them, and he burns the city to the ground. So he's accomplished one of the tasks in punishing one of the people that were starting that revolt. Now, he sets off now to punish Athens. So the Athenians are in distress. They actually ask the Spartans for aid. The Spartans unfortunately refuse to come quickly. They don't refuse completely, and this is because a religious festival is going on in Carnia, and the Spartans cannot fight during this festival. They do indeed come to the battle, but unfortunately it's far too late. Anyways, the Athenians are placed in a battle against these Persian forces alongside their small allies, the Plataeans, and they number in about 10,000 Athenians and 1,000 Plataeans. Modern scholars are placing the Persian numbers around 25,000 infantry, 1,000 cavalry. Herodotus, an ancient scholar, would tell us that there was about 6,000 chariots for the Persians, 50 horse carriers, and another ancient scholar, Justin, tells us that the Persians numbered about 600,000. Just ancient scholars exaggerating numbers to produce propaganda and to make it into more of a legend. These numbers are ridiculous. Don't believe ancient scholars always. So, in the Battle of Marathon, we have the Greeks pitted defending their position against the Persians coming up onto the banks. Now, the field of Marathon is a little bit swampy, and the Greeks have managed to club them in a bit and force them to play in a terrain that is working completely against them. And remarkably, the Greeks win this battle and push them all the way back to their boats. Herodotus even tells us that about 6,400 Persians died, while the Athenians lost a minuscule 192 and the Plataeans 11. So Darius decides he's going to try and attack Athens again by sailing and trying to be clever to sneak up on the city. The Athenians are quick to figure this out, and they run to their city. So Darius realizes he's done the work that he's done, and he goes back to Asia. For the Persians, this wasn't a big deal. This loss barely touched the vast amount of resources of their empire, and it wasn't even significant for them in the first place. For the Greeks, this is one of the most significant points of their history. They had proved that the Persian Empire was not invincible. However, Darius would not be done with Athens. So was Darius solely looking at Greece? Was this the only thing he was doing at the time? Not at all. In fact, Greece is a very minuscule part of everything that was going on for him historically. At this time, he was doing multiple campaigns to secure his new empire that he inherited. He had attacked the Indus Valley in 516 BC, securing Central Asia, Arya, Bactria, present-day Afghanistan and Pakistan, and he stretched his empire as far as the Suez. He quelled multiple revolts, not just the Ionian one. He had quelled one in Babylon, in Egypt, and he also took parts of Thrace and got just past European Scythia. After the Battle of Marathon, he had failed to punish the Athenians as he had wanted to. However, he didn't forget about them. He had planned to make another invasion, but unfortunately died in 486 BC, leaving his son Xerxes to ascend to the throne. Now Xerxes would follow in his father's footsteps and decide to punish the Athenians for what they had done to the sacred temples in Sardis when they burnt them down, and he spent 2 years planning the invasion. So Xerxes, after 2 years of planning, is invading Greece, and his intention is to punish Athens. King Leonidas, the reigning king of Sparta at this time, at the ripe age of 60 years old, quite an old man to go to war. He's commanding 600 Spartans, all of which are fathers with sons, because Sparta at this time is having a demographic problem. Their population is dwindling and it's quite small. So he goes on this march to Thermopylae to do battle. He takes with him 900 helots. Helots are the slave laborers of Sparta, of which there are many. I might talk about in another episode. As he is going on this march, his intention is to incorporate any troops he can from other Greek city-states along the way. Herodotus tells us that he gets about 6,100 people to join. And this consists of Thebians, Phocians, Thespians, Lacedaemonians, the Perrhaci, which are allies to the Spartans, Arcadians, and there's many more. Diodorus has similar figures totaling around 7,500. Modern-day scholars would tell us it was about 7,000 people in total. Did you really think it was 300 men that fought this Persian force? 2,000? No, it was 7,000. Now, for the Persians, how many were there? And this is a very debated question. Herodotus would tell you there was 2.5 million of them. Siomenes, a poet, claimed there was 4 million. Ctesias, based on Persian records, he states, said there's about 800,000. Modern-day scholars are pitching around 60,000 to 300,000. Personally, when I was learning this in university, I had one teacher throw about 120,000 on the table as being one of the most respected numbers. So why did King Leonidas only bring 300 Spartans? These are the greatest soldiers of the ancient world. Well, this is because of two things going on at the time. Again, like we saw in the marathon, there was a festival of Carnia. There was also the Olympic Games going on. And in the ancient world, when the Olympic Games went on, there was a truce in which no one fought. So for Sparta, this was a double sacrilege if they went to war. Leonidas was taking 300 royal guards on a walk. Basically, this is his interpretation. So as he is going, he makes his way to Thermopylae, and they have to set up their defense. What he does is he realizes and he's told that there's a goat path, if you can see on this map, that ranges across, and if any of the forces of the Persians were to find this, they could get behind where he has decided to make a stand in the Hellmouth, a narrow passage in Thermopylae. He decides to dispatch 1,000 Phocians to guard this pass. Now, he sends up his war council with all the members of his forces to decide the course of action. When he does this, the Phocians and the Locarians begin, in a panic, to demand they go to their local towns, because they're quite close to the location, to get more aid. And one of the cries that they say is, because of the arrows the Persians have, these barbarians, it makes it impossible to see the sun. And then Leonidas says the popular phrase, "Won't it be nice then, we shall have some shade to fight in." So Herodotus tells us that upon facing the Greek forces, Xerxes sends an envoy saying he would give them freedom, titles as friends of Persia, and they would be given even more land that they currently own if they disband. Leonidas refuses. And Xerxes, in an enraged state, sends a letter saying, "Hand over your arms," in which Leonidas says the iconic phrase, "Come and take them." So the Battle of Thermopylae is commenced. It's the first day of the battle. Xerxes sends in 5,000 archers to fire a barrage about 100 yards away from the forces. This to no effect. The Greek bronze shields and their helmets protect them completely. Then Xerxes decides he's going to send in the first 10,000 men to attack. These men consist mostly of Medians, and they're confronted with a full phalanx formation, as Darius tells us, of the Spartan soldiers and their Greek allies. Now, alongside performing the phalanx, the Spartans in particular are doing another tactic. They're feinting a retreat and luring the Persian forces in and killing them as they run after them. Also, Herodotus states that all of the Greek city-states made their own formations so that they could circulate and allow some forces to rest to prevent fatigue. According to Satius, the first wave was cut into ribbons, and only 2 to 3 Spartans had died. Xerxes also reported to have stood up 3 times from his throne to look in amazement at what was going on. He couldn't believe it. Herodotus and Darius say that the king was trying to take in a measure of the enemy, and then he decided he was going to send in his best troops into a second assault. This was the Persian immortals, of which there was 10,000 of them. However, they did not fare any better than the Medians. It's the second day of the battle. Xerxes sends in his infantry, believing that the Greek forces must all be wounded since they were so few in number. He has no more success than the first day. He then stops the assault to withdraw to his camp, completely perplexed. At this point, Ephialtes of the Trinian, the traitor, informs him that there is a small mountain path around Thermopylae, and he offers to guide the Persian forces to get around to outflank the Greek forces. His motivation is for reward, and his name is forever stigmatized as that being a nightmare. He symbolizes betrayal. A side note, in Dante's Inferno, Ephialtes is one of the 4 giants placed in the pit that separates the 7 and 8 circles of hell, where he is chained. So Xerxes sends one of his commanders, Hyrdanes, with the Persian mortals across the path to encircle the Greek forces. So we have the third day of the battle. At daybreak, the Phocian forces guarding the path notice they've been outflanked. The Persians have come. The Phocians retreat to a nearby hill where they make their stand, assuming the Persians would follow. However, the Persians did not want delay, so they shot a volley of arrows at them and then bypassed them completely, going over to encircle the main Greek forces with Leonidas. Leonidas has been sent word by the Phocians from a runner, and he makes a council of war at dawn. At this point, Diodorus states that Leonidas told the rest of the Greek forces that they could leave if they wanted to. All but 2,000 of them had left at this point. Leonidas then ordered many of those men to leave, but Herodotus states that in the end, about 700 Thespians, led by General Demophilius, refused to leave and stayed to fight with their Spartan allies. So what are the reasons why Leonidas decided to stay and fight? One reason you could argue is it was to uphold ancient Spartan law, that being not to retreat. However, this event in question is what created the notion of Spartans never retreating, argued by Herodotus. It's also possibly he was told by the Oracle of Delphi that he would sacrifice his life and the men around him to save Sparta itself. On top of this, the one that scholars will probably argue the most is he simply wanted to save the lives of the Greeks that he told to leave, to give them some time to run away from the Persian forces. In the end, he stood and fought. So the Persian forces sent in a wave of 10,000 men and charged into the Greek formation. This time, however, the Greeks weren't in the narrow pass. They came out in the open because they wanted to meet them head on to do as much damage as possible. Herodotus tells us that 2 of Xerxes' brothers actually died in this fight, Abracomes and Hybarianthes. Leonidas was shot by Persian archers, and it's said that as soon as he had fallen, the Thebians, of all the allies that had stayed, moved away from their allies and surrendered with their hands upheld high. The rest of the Greek forces, as told to us by the ancient scholar Herodotus, defended to the last man using swords, hands, and teeth. Xerxes ordered the wall that they had built torn down, and he rained arrows on the remaining Greeks until the pass was finally open. And in the end, Herodotus tells us 20,000 Persians had died and 4,000 Greeks had died, ending the battle. So after the battle, Xerxes takes the body of Leonidas, he beheads it, and he crucifies it. A remark here. Herodotus tells us this is extremely uncommon for the Persians, who traditionally had always treated valiant warriors with honor. Xerxes has always been depicted as a man with endless rage, so there is an argument here as to if it happened or not. I would say probably not. So in 480 BC, by this time, the Athenians have learned of the loss at Thermopylae, and they've evacuated the city. And Xerxes shows up, he kills everyone that's still standing there, and he razes the city to the ground. Everything is burnt. So now, as you will recall in 490 BC, Eretria was burnt down by Darius, and now Athens has been burnt down by Xerxes in 480. Both have been accomplished. They've been punished for the rebellion in Ionia. So, after this, Xerxes leaves mainland Greece. It's critical to note, he didn't do this simply off of a whim. There was unrest in Babylon. There was a rebellion in his empire, the key province actually in his empire, and this required his attention. Greece was never truly that important for him. At this time, it wasn't a significant place, but it will always be infamous for the battle that was fought between the Persians and the Greeks, and for the history that would come forth as a result in their bitter wars. So this concludes the Battle of Thermopylae. Now I'd like to hear more from you, the viewers. Would you like me to talk more about what happens in the future? For instance, the Battle of Salamis that happens after this, in which Xerxes' forces suffer another humiliation, which leads him down a depressing path later in his life until his demise. Or would you like me maybe to speak outside of ancient Greece? Perhaps something of ancient Rome, the Republic, the Empire, or even something closer to home about World War II. I'd love to hear anything the viewers might have to say or your keen interests. Please send your emails, send comments down below, tweet to me, whatever you like. Hope to hear from you soon.